My moves, they chasing the fame, but they ain't got what's running through these veins. Make way for the king. Make way for the kingdom. King me, checkmate then repeat. This chestnut checkers, what can I say? I got goat jeans. Real kings do king things. Live like it's running through these veins. Make way for the king.
Start off by just saying I really do appreciate having the opportunity to speak to you. What's going on with respect to, and why I wanted to come and speak here, I told Anthony I really wanted to speak at this meeting because there is a lot of interest in OSHA on fall protection, and also with respect to roofers. There's a national emphasis program on roofing countrywide. OSHA is looking for, on fall protection, looking for work that they can see. So I just want to tell you, well, I'll just first start and say thank you for your commitment to safety. It really is important. You really need to know that safety is important. Safety can be a profit center for you. And that was one of the things that Anthony and I were talking about when I first got introduced to him, because I do a lot of work with roofers all around the country. And it is important, like I said, you're kind of a target for OSHA. And more you're seeing that OSHA is doing drive-bys. You're in there, they can see you doing the work. They can see if you're not wearing fall protection. They're going to be able to stop. And under the, oh good, we got it. Under the law, OSHA can, if an inspector sees somebody that is arguably in violation of the standards, all they have to do is call up their boss, and their boss can say, you can go and start that inspection right now. They don't have to go through anything else. They can show up. So let's kind of go back to the thing here, to the thing. So, like I say, I wanted to say thank you for y'all's commitment to safety and health because it really is important. You're in a dangerous industry. Like it or not, you're in a dangerous industry. People can get killed. People are getting killed. Not every day, but probably once, maybe once a month, maybe once a week. So you need to understand that. So we got to be focused on safety. And I put that quote from Vince Lombardi. He's one of my favorite coaches. And he said, winning is not a sometimes thing, it's an all-times thing. And when I first heard that, I said, you know, that's what applies to safety too. If you're not going to have safety all the time, you know what's going to happen? Your people are going to get injured, your people are going to get killed, because the type of work that you're doing is very important. Now, one thing I did want to make sure that when you left here today, that you're going to be able to go out and say, you know, I saw this crazy guy talking, he supposedly was the former head of OSHA, and he was talking, but I got one thing out of his whole presentation. It was very important, and that's what I wanted to make sure. I wanted you to make sure you can go home and at least have one thing you can tell your spouses or your friends or family, one of the things that you learned from this conference. So here is the safety tip of the day. Never take a sleeping pill and a laxative at the same time. It's very important. Some of y'all are not getting this. This is kind of sad here. I'm a little worried about this. But anyway, I got another safety tip of the day. And this is another one of my other favorite coaches and players there, Yogi Berra. He said, if you don't know where you're going, you might wind up someplace else. And when you really think about this, isn't this really true about what you're working on, what you're doing, the things that you're doing? If you don't have a plan, if you don't have a safety plan, what's going to happen? People are going to get injured or killed. So that's why it's very important. We'll end up someplace else, and you're not going to like where you're ending up, to be quite honestly. So that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about what we're going to do, because most of you roofers in the United States are small and medium-sized employers. They don't have, like the big boys and girls, a whole safety staff, and have all these other consultants on board and everything else. They don't have it. They can't afford it. So one of the things that we're going to try to do with Anthony is do these videos, start putting in all the training that you have to have, and kind of talk to the owners of the companies, the CEOs and company presidents of these small and medium-sized companies particularly, to tell them, these are the things you got to do. I got to tell you, why is this safety important to you? We're going to talk about that. We're going to explain why this is so important. And just to give you an example of why safety is so important to your companies, all of you probably know what your workers' comp cost is. And so you can go from there And you can say, okay, here's my workers' comp. Most CEOs, company presidents think, when I used to ask them, when I was head of OSHA, I would meet with a lot of CEOs and company presidents, I would ask them the question, what is the cost of you injuring an employee? And inevitably, they would just give me their workers' comp cost. Now, it used to be that the safety profession considered the real true cost of injuring an employee was 2 times your workers' comp cost. And that had been the kind of the standard for decades. But there's been a lot of studies done on this in the last 5 years. And it turns out that the real true cost of injuring an employee is 5 times your workers' comp. 5 times. That's what the true cost is. There's all these unseen costs that are associated with that. And particularly if you have a serious injury or if you have a fatality, how does this impact you? Well, I can tell you that some of the projects I've worked off in the past, OSHA those projects are shut down until OSHA completes investigation. If you have a fatality, you could have a potential criminal prosecution. The local sheriff or the local police may shut down that project for doing their investigation. That's going to cost you money and time and all the other associated. So that's why this is so important. So now I did want to kind of start off and kind of explain, I wanted to just kind of give you some information. And these slides, we'll make sure if you want any of these slides, you can just ask Anthony or email me, one of the two. I'll send you the whole thing. It doesn't matter. We don't have that many slides. But this was last year, these were the top 10 most frequently cited standards. And let's go to the next slide here. This is more important to you. Here is the top 15 citations last year, 2019. This is the top citations that OSHA issued to roofing contractors. So what does this do? Why is this so important? Because if you know, these are the things that when OSHA comes on your sites, these are the things they're finding that you're not doing right. These are the things that you're getting violations for. These are the things that you're getting penalized for. And I'm going to show you the penalties in a second. So you need to be looking at that. Duty to have fall protection is number 1. It's going to keep growing. That one's not going any away. But you can see each one of these ladders, training of fall protection, eye and face protection, scaffolding. Sometimes you're dealing with that. Record keeping. A lot of you probably don't even are very familiar. This is not a problem just for small, medium-sized employees. I deal with Fortune 500 companies that don't do record keeping right. So it's not that simple, but we're going to be doing this on part of these on the videos we're going to be focusing on is explaining to the owners and presidents and CEOs what they got to do. But we're also going to have in the videos, we're going to talk about how the hourly employees, what they're supposed to do when reporting injuries and illnesses. So we'll talk all about this, and we're going to be we're going to do videos on every one of these topics because these are the things that you're going to know, you got to understand what's going on. So it's very important that we're focused on those type of things because more and more OSHA is focusing on different types of things. And I mentioned here we have fall protection is one of the national emphasis programs. So all the OSHA area officers around the country are looking at fall protection as an important, because they get gold stars, they get points. OSHA has a point system, and this is very interesting, that basically shows the area directors, if they're going to be getting their bonuses, they have to get a certain amount of credits, what they call EUs. And if you don't you get so many, the more EUs you get, the higher your bonus is going to be. And why is this important? Well, because they just recently changed it. But having large penalties is one of the top categories to get the most EUs. You know, the other new category, and this was just added this past year, another new category for getting the most EUs is criminal referrals. Now, criminal referrals means that you're going to be getting, if you have a fatality, you need to understand this. If you have a fatality, you need, during an OSHA inspection, do not try to do it on your own. Because there's always the potential on a fatality to get a criminal referral from OSHA to the Department of Justice. And now the OSHA area directors are incentivized to look for those type of cases because they'll get more credit. They'll get more gold stars. So we need to be looking at those things, and we need to understand that if we have a fatality, they're probably going to be looking to see, can we turn this into a criminal referral to the Department of Justice? And you obviously never want to get in there. I have 2 cases right now that has had referrals to the Department of Justice. I got 1 case out in Montana that's we've been stayed. The OSHA case has been stayed for 4 years while the Justice Department looks at it. Now, so this employer has been just waiting for 4 years, hearing nothing from the Department of Justice. They've been looking at the file supposedly for 4 years, and they haven't made a determination what they're going to do. Now, can you imagine how that would impact you all and potentially could impact your business? If you have a criminal referral and you're wanting, and first of all, they had to hire criminal lawyers. I'm involved with the case, but I'm not involved in the respect that that I'm doing anything with the criminal lawyers, because that's not what I do. So they've been on that. They've had me on retainer, and they're paying me, but now they're also having to pay the criminal attorneys. And they're meeting every once in a while. They meet with the Department of Justice and talk to them, and they get the same old answer. Well, we're still reviewing the file for 4 years. So you can see how that could impact the bottom line for you. So, and talk about the bottom line, let's look at what the penalties are. Here's a list of these. Look at this file. I want you to look at this list here. This is the most recent OSHA proposed penalties for roofers. And when it was issued, and what city and state, and the penalty amount. We're looking there. We got 2 of them right there, over $1 million. There was another case about a year ago of a roofer that was hit for $2 million. Now let me ask you this: if you got a penalty for $2 million, would that impact your business? Would you? If you got a penalty, look at that second one there, $1,777,1,000. Would that impact your business? Obviously it would. So you need to understand, but look at all the other penalties. These are not small penalties. You're getting, roofers are getting, once again, because of the focus that is there, the roofers are getting some pretty high penalties. And to have this many cases between January 28th of this year and June, now I cut it off on June, I didn't go back any farther. June of last year, we have 17 cases that are very high penalties that are focused on strictly on roofers. I'm not even talking about the people that on any of these cases. None of these are the residential construction doing the erection of the roofs themselves before they get to actually put on the roofs. These are just roofers. So you need to understand, this is very, very important. This is very critical to you to be able to do the things that you need to do. So we got to be focused on this. And once again, the idea about safety, why safety can be a profit center. Because for years, and actually for decades, most employers have felt that safety was just an expense that they had to deal with. And a lot of times they didn't deal with it too there. So you need to be really focused on it, because you can see here just this on this. If you have things in place, because these penalties are involving different violations. To get $1 million penalty, you're going to have, at a minimum, you have to have at least 10 or 9, I guess, 9 willful violations or repeat violations, because right now the repeat violations, willful violations, the maximum penalty is $136,000 for 1 citation. So you can see how this can impact you all very dramatically. And so we need to be focused as best we can on ensuring that we're not in that place. So if we can go back to the previous one there, the previous slide, I don't know if we can go back there. If we can focus on these, because we know this is when OSHA shows up at one of our sites, most of the time, this is what they're finding. Can we make sure that we have the things in place? Can we make sure, let's look in on the first 2, duty of fall protection, and that probably makes the majority of the citations that are issued. Duty of fall protection and ladders. We know what we have to have. We need to know that we have to have that in place. We need to know, and the third one there is doing training. We know we've got to have our employees trained. So we got to be able to document, and that's where a lot of times employers fall down on documentation, because it used to be, all the OSHA standards used to had a specific provision in the standard itself that said you had to have documentation that you did the training. Well, back in the Reagan administration, there was a thing called, a thing that was passed called the, the Paperwork Reduction Act. And the intent of that, this was a big initiative in the Reagan administration, is to get regulations, kind of the same thing that Trump's been doing, get regulations off the backs of particularly of small and medium-sized employers. So all of a sudden, with the passage of the Paperwork Reduction Act, agencies were encouraged to get rid of requirements that required employers to maintain documentation. And so they got all these great good, you got these gold stars if you got rid of those type of things. Well, guess what? OSHA did that to all their policies, and any new standard that's have been added has nothing to say about documentation on training. Doesn't say anything about documentation, but it does. Every one of their standards still has training requirements. And guess what? If you do not document your training, it never happened. I deal with this all the time. They'll come in, OSHA will come in and start, as part of their investigation, they're going to interview the hourly employees. You're going to interview your employees, and one of the things they're going to say is, tell me, were you wearing fall protection? First they're going to say, well, what do you know about fall protection? What are you supposed to have there? Were you ever trained on fall protection? Maybe they were trained last week on fall protection. But I can promise you this, half of them are going to say, no, I don't remember ever getting any training on fall protection, because they just don't, they forget it. It's just, they say, I think I had some training on something, but I'm not exactly sure what training it was. But so now, and they get them to sign a statement, and it's in the statement which is written by the OSHA inspector during the inspection, it says, employee says they didn't have training. Here, would you mind looking at this statement? Would you look it over, and you see anything wrong? No, that's fine, and then they sign it. Well, they're going to sign these things because the government official's telling them, even though they're not required to. So we need to be focused on that. Ladders, here's another one here. We know what we're supposed to be doing on ladders. And of course, we need to be a little bit more familiar because they've changed some of the ladder requirements recently when the new fall protection standard came in place. So we need to understand what is those things are required. They're going to ask them on ladders, were you trained on how to properly use a ladder? Were you trained on the three-point contact? And guess what? They're going to say no. Or maybe they might say, oh, I think so, maybe, I don't know. But you got to understand that. But this is why we end up getting these penalties. Because our employees are saying one thing, and if we don't document it, we can't prove it that they didn't have it. So this is very critical that you are aware of that. So, all right, let's keep moving on. I just got a couple things. I put this slide in there because this is something that's going to be coming down. If you want to know where safety is going in the next 10 to 15, 20 years, this is where it's going to go. And this is what they call the ISO 45001 risk management standard. And why this is important is because you're going to see more and more of your clients are going to be asking you to be 45001 certified. Now, it's not going to get down to, well, it may get down to the smaller, it will eventually get down to the small employers. I don't know if you've ever heard of ISN or Avetta. Some of you may have heard about ISN or Avetta. They are contractor certifiers. They go in, your clients, it's particularly your commercial clients are going to be going, your residential aren't going to be doing this, but your commercial clients are going to, a lot of them are going, because this ISN and Avetta are growing like leaps and bounds. And their job is they get hired by your clients to look at your safety record and determine whether or not you're safe enough to be able to bid on a contract. And why, and that's, you're seeing more and more of this. ISN is based out of Dallas. Avetta is based out of Salt Lake City. These people have been growing and growing because there are more and more companies. They don't want to have unsafe people on their property. And so you may start hearing about this. It's just kind of, this was passed last year, and I actually was on the Technical Advisory Committee for the United States that helped write this standard. And you're going to see it's intended to help companies If you just have a fair safety program, this will help you eventually go to become a great safety program. It drives you that way, and I'm not going to get into all the details, but I can promise you this, that you're going to see more and more of companies looking to see if you're ISN certified down the road within the next 10, 15 years. So it's not something you got to jump on right now, but I just want to kind of talk a little bit about this because it kind of gives you an idea of what you have to do in order to have a great safety program. So, and why ISN is so important is because you're going to see, okay, it's going to lower your cost. If you're involved in ISN, or excuse me, if you're involved in 45001, you're going to have lower potential for civil and criminal liability because you're going to have everything in place. And that's kind of what I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do with Anthony's and the video series there. We're going to be putting things in place, first of all, to make sure that you're fully compliant with all the OSHA standards. And let me tell you something, unfortunately, this is true. If you're just meeting the OSHA requirements, you have at best a fair safety program. You don't even have a good safety program. But we got to start somewhere, and that's what we're going to be doing on this video series. Make sure, first of all, that you're going to be fully OSHA compliant, that you're going to have the policy. We're going to be, and a part of the video series, and it's going to be kind of a whole overall package because I want to make sure that we're going to provide model policies that you can implement on the different standards, lockout, tagout, if you need to do that, but fall protection, hazardous communication. Some of these things you may not think you're covered under, but you are covered under. You know, medical first aid, all those type of things, you're required to do that. So that's what we're going to be focusing on, to start off with the civil, and hopefully as a result, if you're in full compliance, you don't get to the criminal. Because they got to show willful. To get a criminal violation or to get a criminal referral to the Justice Department from OSHA, you've got to have a willful violation of an OSHA standard that resulted in the death of some employee. Okay, that's the standard, that's the test. So if we're in full compliance, we cannot get that willful violation. And therefore, we don't have to worry about having a criminal penalty or at least a criminal referral to the Justice Department. So that's what we're going to be focusing, part of what we're going to focus in on on these videos there, to make sure that you're fully compliant and make sure you have the policies and procedures in place to be able to meet that. So, and 45001 also creates a tool to help be able to show you how you're going to have a return on investment. If you're investing in safety, how is that return on investment? That's been always a hard part for this, but 45001 helps employers. And like I say, one of the things we're going to talk about is explaining to the CEO, to company owners, especially small and medium-sized, why they need to have safety and health. And then, of course, it's going to help on the company's overall culture. They're going to be focused on safety. It's going to tell the employees that we care about you. And it will improve productivity and quality. And that goes to that 5 times workers' comp cost for injured employee. It helps you improve your productivity. It's going to help your quality of work. And as a result, you're going to be more profitable. You're going to be more competitive. And that's part of our focus is going to be part of our focus on the video series, because we want to make sure that you're more profitable and competitive. You got to be this, and you cannot ignore this, because you know over the years in the United States, we've remained profitable and competitive as a country because we kept implementing a lot of these productivity type of things, like Six Sigma, Lean, Just-in-Time, Kaizen, quality circles. All those things were implemented. That's what has kept the United States being profitable and competitive in the world marketplace. And of course, you're not saying, well, we don't deal in the world marketplace. I understand that, but this is still important. So the question is, when you've put those things in place, there's only 2 things left. How can you, to increase profitability and competitiveness, more profitability and production? And that's workers' comp and healthcare. And safety and health focuses on both of those things. So we want to be doing that. So we're going to help improve your productivity and also the quality there. And as it says, you have a result, you have increased profitability and competitiveness. And you're meeting, because you're going to have these things. And like I say, as I mentioned before, on this video series, our goal is that last one there. We want to make sure that you meet all the legal and regulatory requirements to avoid those penalties I showed you before. The impact on workforce, and that's why having a great safety program, even if you're not in 45001, If you're showing that you care about it, you're going to implement safety, people are going to demonstrate your concern and commitment to their welfare. And it's going to improve the efficiency in the internal operations. And once again, it's going to improve productivity and quality. If employees feel that you care, they're not going to be disengaged. You know, there's some studies right now that are out there I've read that say 65 to 70% of the employees, every worker in the United States is disengaged. They show up for work, they go through whatever they're doing, but they don't have their heart in it, and they're not really concentrating on it. And unfortunately, a lot of our accidents, and because of the type of work you all are doing, if they're not concentrating on safety, if they're not concentrating on what they're doing, they're going to get injured. So if we get them engaged, if we get them engaged and they show that we really do care, then they're going to be more focused on this. We're going to explain why safety is important. You know, when I was head of OSHA, I used to talk to a lot of CEOs and company presidents, and every one of them always said the same thing to me: Ed, safety is number one at our company. And a lot of times I would have looked at their safety record, and I had my staff pull their lost time injury and DART rates, and I would say, well, that's interesting. You say that safety and health is number one in your safety is number one at your company. Well, how comes your injury and illness rates and your DART rates are above the industry average? And they wouldn't have an expense because that's all they've been told. They believe that. They thought they had a good safety program, and they had a crappy one. But they've been told that they had all this policies and procedures. That's the other thing that we're going to focus on with the video series, I think, is to focus on making sure that the employees understand why this is important, understand what they have to do, what is expected of them, and then and continue to focus on it while they're working. So a lot of people, a lot of CEOs in the United States think that they have great safety programs, and they don't. So we're going to do that. But once again, safety is going to drive your productivity and your quality, and thus make you more profitable. So, and of course, you want to have a good image too, a safe image within the community. And we're going to see more and more where I can say with this ISN, but even more so. I mean, there was a proposal in the Obama administration that if you had a certain DART rate and a certain injury and illness rate, you weren't going to be able to bid on government contracts. Now that kind of petered out when the Trump administration started, so they're not been looking at that. But I promise you that if we have another Democratic president, which we will eventually, they're going to be focused. They're going to go back to those type of things. They're going to be looking to penalize employees because the unions particularly are very focused on safety. So I don't know if we have any questions, but I would just say, and I got just a minute or two, but I would just say this. We're going to try to help every roofer, be it a small or medium size, or even a large one, but particularly small, medium size. Because that was one of the biggest frustrations I had when I was head of OSHA. OSHA cannot get to the small and medium sized employers. The only time they get to them is because you have an accident. And as you know, the law is, if you have a fatality, you have 8 hours to call OSHA. You are required under the law, every employee in the United States, if they have a work-related fatality, they have to call OSHA within 8 hours. If you have a hospitalization of one or more employees for a work-related incident, you have to call OSHA within 24 hours. That is the law. If you have an amputation is the loss of a fingertip, you have 24 hours to call OSHA. You must call them. And if you don't, you're going to get a citation on that because they're going to find out, particularly on hospitalizations and amputations. And the last one is if you have an employee lose an eye. Now, I've been doing this for almost since 1980, and I've never had a loss of an eye. But once again, you have a legal responsibility to contact OSHA within 24 hours for those three things. And then the fatality, 8 hours. But guess what? If you call OSHA, they're going to come. And that's why the small and medium-sized employers are still going to be caught up in this whole thing. So anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk to you all today. Safety is very important because if you do it right, you are going to be more profitable and more competitive. But more importantly is each day your employees are going to go home safe and sound to their families and loved ones. And when you really look at the bottom line of everything, that's probably the most important thing. Because you don't want to ever have a fatality. I've done 400 OSHA fatality investigations. It is not a pleasant sight. It sticks with you the rest of your life. So thank you again for being committed to safety and health. Thank you for having me here today, and I deeply appreciate you being here.